Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome. We've got a good crowd in here. Tell me in the chat where you're tuning in from. Tell me in the chat. Let's get interactive. Maine. My brother was stationed there for a little bit with the Coast Guard. I never got to visit him, but he loved it. Fort Bragg, ooh, Virginia, Fayetteville. Oh, look at that, your neighbor,
Yeah,
Caleb.
100%.
I love it. Maryland. Hey, hey. All right, folks. So we're going to give everybody a minute or two to get in here while I get my life situated. Um, I'm really excited for this because we've been doing several trainings, but we haven't actually had one officially on the VA loan. And you would think like a military community, we'd have one like about the VA loan, but also sometimes I just feel like when you think military training or military masterminds, it's like, oh God, all we ever talk about is the loan. But we do need to get in here and talk about this loan sometimes, guys. Um, so that's what we're here to do. So, all right. I think, let me see, we don't have anybody else in the waiting room. So if they trickle in, we will let them in. But guys, I am Michelle. Hi, I am the education and programming coordinator for the community and also recently named the co-chair of the community.
Thank
So
you.
welcome. Yay.
Okay.
So welcome. We got a lot of big things coming. But in the meantime, right now, what we're going to do is ask that everybody mute themselves, please. Thank you. Okay. And the other thing that we're going to do is welcome with big open arms to our little community, Kaleb White. He will introduce himself because he's going to go ahead and do that. But he is here to chat with us all about the VA loan. And I'm going to stop talking now. Caleb, go ahead.
All right. I am absolutely blessed to be presenting to you guys. Thanks for having me, Michelle. So like you said, my name is Caleb. I am in the Fort Bragg area, so Fayetteville, North Carolina. And today we're just kind of going a little high level, a little low level on the VA loan as a whole. Feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat. I most likely will reserve them to the end for a nice little Q&A session. If anything resonates with you from what we're talking about, feel free to drop it in the chat as well, because we're going to be talking about not only the basics of the VA loan, but some pet peeves that I've had and some scenarios that I've dealt with that have caused a little bit of headaches, right? All right. So to kick it all off, this presentation, mastering the VA loan. So mastering the VA loan means understanding really how to lead your clients using one of the most powerful home buying benefits in the country with confidence and precision. All right. There is a lot of misconceptions about the VA loan, and sometimes it gets a bad rep where it is not used often. This presentation preps you with the information and tools to better understand your VA client's needs and the process in which they're going through when applying for this loan. Okay. So, a little bit about me. Once again, my name is Kaleb White. I have been licensed for 6 years. I've been with EXP for 3 of those years. I have been blessed enough to be able to cap and icon all 3 years. Right now, we are located in the Fort Bragg, North Carolina area, but we just recently expanded into the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area as well. And we have been blessed enough to help over 250 military members secure a home or investment property within that 6 years I've been licensed. So, of course, a little picture of me and some of the clients I've closed with. Now, this is probably going to be pretty basic information for you guys, but I want to cover it as a baseline. What is the VA loan? Okay. The VA loan is a mortgage loan in the United States that is guaranteed by the Department of Veteran Affairs, so the VA. It's designed to help eligible veterans, active duty service members, reservists, and certain surviving spouses buy, build, or improve, or even refinance their home. Okay. So, one thing that we're definitely going to be diving into is not only service members can use the VA loan, right? So actually, what most people don't know is you could assume a loan and not be military. So we'll dive into that in a moment. All right, so the history of the VA loan. This is where it gets a little fun, guys, okay? So the VA loan was born from the GI Bill in 1944. The VA loan was created under the Servicemen's Readjustment Act to help returning World War II veterans buy homes and reintegrate into civilian life. All right, so instead of lending money directly, the program guaranteed a portion of the loan, reducing the risk for lenders and opening the door for veterans, right? The goal is to provide home ownership. It is not a giveaway. Okay. I hear all the time that VA users or VA buyers are underqualified. Not the case at all. Just because they do not have a down payment does not mean anything at all. If anything, they are reserved that right for serving our country. Okay. Over time, zero money down becomes the standard. All right. The VA loan became known for its no down payment, competitive rates, and no private mortgage insurance or the PMI. Okay. So today's impact, today, backed by the VA loan has helped over 25 million veterans and families achieve home ownerships. Yes, Matthew, we will talk a little bit about assumptions. All right. So some of the benefits of the VA loan, no required down payment. There can be a down payment in some scenarios, but they are not required by any means. There is no private mortgage insurance. So unlike the FHA loan, which has a permanent private mortgage insurance, the VA loan does not. Okay. There is limited closing costs and often competitive interest rates compared with conventional loans and other loan products. Okay. So, what are the qualifications to be able to use the VA loan? Okay, so you must meet these service requirements set by the VA, and they include eligible veterans, active duty service members, the National Guard, and reserve members. This is key right here, with 6 years of eligible time in or 90 days of active duty service. Okay. Some surviving spouses, this is usually proven with a certificate of eligibility. And this is my favorite part right here, guys. There is no VA mandated minimum credit score. Okay. So a lot of people ask, well, what kind of credit score do I need to have with the VA loan? Well, technically, there's no minimum. Where the minimums come into play is lender overlays. Okay. So these are usually requirements by the lender themselves when applying for that VA loan. There's also no hard DTI or debt to income ratio limit set by the VA either. So those are some common misconceptions. You know, you have to have a certain DTI percentage or you need to have a certain credit score. Well, technically, no. And I even know of some VA lenders that don't have a minimum credit score at all. But one thing to really pay attention is there's usually a reason why that credit score is low. Okay. There's usually a reason why that DTI is high. Okay. So we can't ignore those facts either. All right, so property eligibility. All right, these are the qualifications for the VA loan in terms of property eligibility, and that includes the home must be your primary residence. Okay, so single family homes, VA approved condos, multi units, up to 4 units if you live in one. Okay, manufactured and modular homes, absolutely no mobile homes. All right, so if it has that axle and it has those wheels, so it's not flying with the VA, okay? And then it also must meet the minimum property requirements, which we'll dive into as well. Okay. Touching a little bit on the VA entitlement itself, the VA entitlement is the amount the VA guarantees to the lender on your behalf. Okay, it's not money that the service member receives. It's just a guarantee that allows lenders to offer the better terms, like the no PMI and things like that. All right, when you use a VA loan, a portion of your entitlement is tied up into that loan. And when you sell the property or pay off the property, your entitlement is fully restored. All right. Now, you can have remaining entitlement and use the VA loan at the same time in some cases. I know plenty of clients that have a VA loan on their previous home and still are able to buy a new home. All right. There's no official loan limit for the VA loans if you have full entitlement as well. So that's definitely something for you to check on with your client. Your client will be able to see this on their certificate of eligibility, guys. All right. Now, I've ran into some really tricky scenarios where we've had to really strategize on how we're going to regain some of that entitlement. I've had a scenario where we've had to take a previous home and refinance it conventional just so that entitlement will start to go back up and then they can purchase with their VA loan. So there are creative ways to get around that, but the biggest thing is understanding with the lender and your client themselves what is actually at their disposal. Okay, the funding fee. All right, so this is a tricky one, guys. All right, so there's no down payment, right? But there is a funding fee. All right, and it is usually rolled into the loan cost. Okay, you can pay it up front, totally can, but most times it is rolled into the loan amount itself. So the funding fee is a one-time fee charged on most VA loans to help keep the program self-funded and available for future veterans. All right, it's paid to the VA, not to the lender. That's a key note as well. All right. The amount mainly depends on, is this the first time using your VA loan or is it a repeat use? Okay. And of course, guys, I'm going to give y'all this slideshow so you can use it as a resource for your day to day. But one thing I want to highlight on this one frame is the first time use, zero down, and usually that funding fee is about 2.15% of the loan amount. Subsequent use, okay, zero down and 3.3%. All right. Now, if you choose to do a 5% down, it's 1.5 of the funding fee. And then if you choose to do 10% or up down, it's usually 1.25% for what the funding fee will be. I just ran into the situation and we had to get really specific about the numbers with the lender and with the client about what's going to make most sense for their situation. All right. Now, second, I apologize. The funding fee can be waived. The funding fee can be waived for service members receiving VA disability compensation, even if they are receiving retirement or active duty pay. Veterans eligible for disability compensation based on a pre-discharged exam or review. Purple Heart recipients are waived from the funding fee, and some eligible surviving spouses as well. Okay. So the VA loan appraisal gets a bad rep, guys. Realistically, they're looking out for the safety and concern of the veteran themselves. All right. Let's talk about what the process of the VA loan is. So let's say, you have a VA loan client, they just went under contract. Usually what I do is as soon as we submit that contract to the lender, I say, let's go ahead and get that VA loan, or sorry, that VA appraisal ordered. So what happens is there's a job board through a VA portal where basically they request title. The VA appraisal gets published to a job board and an appraiser picks it up. Okay. The VA certified appraiser visits the home and like most appraisers, right, they use comparable sales to support the value. They look at the overall condition of the home and of course checking the health and safety basics, looking at the roof, utilities, access to the property, hazards, things like that. So between the value and the minimum property requirements being reviewed, they issue the appraisal report. And that includes the appraised value and any repair conditions required to meet the VA standards, their minimum property requirements. After the appraisal has been issued, it will go through a process which is called the notice of value. This is the VA's official value determining what the value is, okay? And honestly, the biggest question I always get, or the biggest misconception I get between the actual client themselves is that the VA appraisal is a home inspection. It's not. Okay. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to, our veterans and they'll say, "Oh, I don't need a home inspection. I'll use the VA home inspection. It's required." Not even worried about it. And, there's been a couple times where, you're trying to convey this information in a way to make it seem like I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong, sir, but I definitely think, we need to look at this from a different angle. The VA appraisal is not a home inspection. It's a valuation ordered by the lender and overseen by the VA to confirm fair market value, safety, soundness, and livability. All right. Real world scenarios, that appraiser is most likely not going in that crawl space, and he's most likely not going in that attic as well. Okay. And I usually tell my clients that they're really looking for safety hazards or exterior deficiencies because that's what we see the most on these appraisals, right? So any type of siding damage, anything that could be a direct hazard to the veteran themselves, you can definitely expect that to be on that appraisal as a required repair. Now, don't get me wrong. I've seen some crazy stuff. I've seen leaning fences. I've seen, the carpet having too much ripples in it, like it's bunched up and needs to be stretched out. I've seen there's been holes in the carpet, I've seen so many crazy things that I start off by telling a client that they're looking out for your best interest to make sure there's no exterior damage and safety hazards. But do not be surprised if we have an appraiser that really wants to do his job that day and adds a bunch of things on there because they definitely will. But at the end of the day, the VA appraisal is really not much different from other appraisal processes. And I think, overall, the VA loan gets the bad rep between, hearing that the VA appraisal process is a lot tougher and then the client not having any money to put down. I think it starts making people feel like this is not a really good loan product when realistically it's one of the best ones out. Okay. Now, when we're talking about the minimum property requirements for a property as a whole, they're going to make sure that they have working heat, water, and electricity. We're going to make sure that the roof has a reasonable remaining life on it. I'm not going to lie to you. They don't usually hit on the roof too much, but I just had one where they said that they had the seller trying to be preemptive left all of their warranty paperwork and everything like that out. The house had a 15-year roof on it. All right. And literally the warranty said that it was only covered for 5 years and that the roof was replaced on the home 20 years ago. So, of course, the appraiser went through all the documents in front of him and realized that this is 5 years past its average lifespan. Well, sure enough, they said that we needed to get a new roof on there. I've never had an appraiser request a new roof installation until then. And then so he didn't sit there and say, "Oh, I reviewed all the documents and that's what led me to this conclusion." He just said it needed a new roof. So I call him and I'm asking, trying to probe his mind, trying to figure out why he would put that on there. And he told me plain as day, well, they gave me all of the information and I saw it. And that puppy's past its lifespan. Okay, so, and trying to protect the veteran, we're requesting that it get replaced. So they're also trying to make sure there's no active water intrusion. They're trying to make sure there's safe access to the home, which we'll touch on and a scenario that I ran into with a private road maintenance agreement. And then they also want to make sure that there's no exposed wiring, major structural issues, or safety hazards themselves. Okay. It's important to notice that the VA standards focus on safety and livability, not cosmetic perfection. However, don't be surprised if you see some cosmetic items on that appraisal, because it will happen. All right. Now, talking about what Miss Michelle just mentioned about the Tidewater. Okay. I actually believe this is a great thing for the VA loan because it gives you a chance to argue, at least, right? So it gives you a chance to negotiate, and that's what real estate's all really about. So if the home appraises low, the appraiser or the lender will issue Tidewater, which basically means, hey, the appraiser has alerted us that they believe that the home is going to come in below value. And we're giving both the buyer's agent and the listing agent the opportunity to submit comparables to fight for the value. All right. Now, there is usually a little bit of discourse about whose job that is, the listing or the buyer's agent. I'm saying you could make arguments for both sides. Realistically, it's in your best interest to get your buyer to that closing table. Some people would argue, a lower purchase price helps the buyer. Well, if you have to go through another round of negotiations that ultimately terminates the deal, it's a gray area, right? But obviously, the listing and the buyer's agent has an opportunity to submit comps to the lender for review. Now, let's say that they do this review and yes, the value comes in low. All right. You have a couple of options now. You can renegotiate with the seller that purchase price to drop it down to the appraised value. You can request a reconsideration of value with better comps. All right. And this is a tool that most people do not think that they have. All right. They think that the value came in low. That's it, guys. Game over. And that's not the case. Your client's going to have to write a pretty well written letter explaining why they feel the house is valued the way it is, or the value that the purchase price, and you have to submit three more comps. All right. And these comparable properties cannot be the same ones initially submitted when they issue Tidewater. So if you get a nice, pretty letter written up by your buyer why they feel that the property is valued at the purchase price, and we submit three comps kind of enforcing that message, I'm not gonna lie, there's only out of probably about 5 to 10 times I have submitted reconsideration of value, I have only not gotten it once. Okay, so this is a serious tool. Now, obviously, you have to speak with your client about the ramifications of this, right? Obviously, the appraiser probably had a good idea of why this property was valued the way it is. All right, so you need to talk to your client about, are they okay with going through this process? Because technically, you are raising the appraised value, and that can affect negotiations. It can affect how things happen later down the road as well. All right. And the last option, which hardly ever happens, we never want our buyer to do this unless they absolutely have to and they love the home. The buyer can bring cash to cover the gap. Okay. Not really the best option. Obviously, it's going to be more out of pocket money for your client, but it can save the deal if they really do like the property. All right. Now, if the home requires repairs, right, we obviously negotiate the repairs with the listing agent and the seller. Now, here in my area in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, a lot of the times when the appraisal comes back and it has required repairs, we don't really have to talk about it too much. It's kind of understood that we are in a super heavy VA market. You ran into these issues. If you decide to go back on the market and deal with another VA buyer, you're most likely going to run into these issues again. So we don't really have to negotiate too much on appraisal required repairs yeah, fingers crossed, in this scenario. But if you're in an area or in a location that doesn't use the VA as much, the VA loan as much, you may have to do a little bit more negotiating. Okay. Now, just like the reconsideration of value, excuse me, you can request a minimum property requirement waiver. All right. And what is this, guys? This is basically a letter, once again, from your client stating that they're kind of okay with the repairs, the required repairs, and they don't want to get them completed. May cause the deal to fall apart, X, Y, or Z. But they can make their case to the lender in the VA on why we should basically waive these repairs from being completed. Another option is you can do what's called an escrow holdback, guys. So basically, what this means is, let's say the seller cannot complete the repairs before closing, but they can give you a credit for the repairs, right? What the lender will do is they will create an escrow account holding that credit for the repairs until after closing when these repairs are completed. Now, depending on the lender, they may ask for a little bit more money than the repairs are actually quoted as, just to give a little bit of variance in case the repairs are more than they were quoted at. Okay, so this is a big tool, and we use this a lot, especially when we're dealing with crunch timelines, late appraisals, and things like that. The escrow holdback is definitely a strong tool. Okay, now let's talk about the required inspections as a whole. Even though the VA requires certain inspections for certain scenarios, a full home inspection is monumental. Okay, guys, I tell my clients all the time a home inspection may not be required, but it's highly recommended. Okay. Because for those clients, like I said previously, for those clients that think that the VA appraisal is end all be all, most appraisers are not going in the attic, they're not going in the crawl space. And realistically, they're there to establish value, right? If they notice anything that doesn't meet the requirements established by the VA, of course they're going to note it. But it's not like they're in there with a magnifying glass looking for things like a home inspector is, guys. All right. So the wood destroying insect report. This is required in most states and most counties as well. Okay. So this is when you have basically a pest company. They go into the crawl space and sometimes the attic, and they're checking for any wood destroying insects. Okay. In our area, that's termites, carpenter bees, wood boring beetles, and things like that. Now, another kicker of the wood destroying insect report is they're going to check for the moisture level in the crawl space. I know they do it here at least. Okay. And if you're in an area like Fayetteville, North Carolina, where it is super humid, it is super hot, okay, a lot of the time that moisture level is going to come above 20%. Now, I've done a lot of research in this, guys. Some places in the VA handbook, it says 19%. Some places it says above 21%. All I can tell you is if it's above 17%, most likely the lender is going to hit on it. And they're going to ask for either a specialist to go out there to determine whether or not it needs to be remediated, excuse me, or they're going to ask to see if there's any like mold, any type of fungal stuff in there, because they're going to want to make sure that not only the moisture levels get brought down, but it's not a conducive area for things that could harm the veteran later. Okay. So definitely pay attention to the moisture levels because you think that you're just worrying about termite damage, and then you realize you have 25% moisture levels in the crawl space, and now you got to get a vapor barrier, dehumidifier, sump pump in some cases. It's a rabbit hole to say the least. Okay, guys. Now, well water testing. If your property is on a well, they're going to require you to get a well water test to test for lead, nitrates, E. coli, and coliform bacteria. Obviously, just trying to make sure that the drinking water is safe for the veteran. Okay. Radon gas. Now, you won't see this too much as like a, hey, you need to go get this inspection. This is actually mainly required for new construction homes. All right. For new construction properties, the builder must certify that radon resistant construction techniques were used according to local building codes where applicable. And then the structural inspection. See this all the time when we're dealing with manufactured and modular homes. Okay. If the hitch and wheels have been taken off and it's on a permanent foundation, that's what they're really looking for. And of course, if there's any structural issues, let's say, one of the piers are just standing on some cinder blocks, they're probably going to make note of that. And it's going to be a requirement to get fixed before closing. So definitely got to pay attention to those. All right. Loan assumptions. My guy, Matthew. All right. So VA loan assumptions, veterans and non-veterans can both assume, right? A VA loan can be assumed by virtually anyone. veterans, active service members, civilians, non-veterans, as long as they meet the lender's financial approval. Okay. Upon assumption, let me take a step back. Civilians can assume the VA loan. Let me point out by saying it's not often, right? They really are really strict about non-veterans assuming those loans, and usually it's only under certain circumstances. The reason I put it in here is because I didn't want to use a very strong statement and say that non-veterans cannot assume the loan, right? Because that's just not the truth. But in reality, the chances of a non-veteran assuming that loan, I've had it tried several times. It's slim to none, okay? But in some certain circumstances, I apologize, it can happen. Now, the same loan terms transfer. Upon assumption, the buyer keeps the exact same interest rate and terms of the existing VA loan, which could be a major advantage in the rising rate environments. So obviously being in an environment where the VA loan is used probably about 80 to 85% of the time, man, when interest rates were in the sevens, almost every single listing had an advertisement about a VA loan assumption. Because when people were buying them for 2 to 3% in 2021, 2022, you know, that is now a major marketing piece when that person is trying to sell a change in duty stations. Now, with the loan assumption, one major thing I want to stress, and I think anybody should stress to their client, is this. So, for VA homeowners, the big consideration with allowing an assumption is their VA loan entitlement. If the person assuming your loan is a veteran with sufficient VA loan entitlement, then you can ask them to formally substitute their entitlement for yours on that mortgage. Why would we do that? Because otherwise, the entitlement you utilize to purchase the home will remain tied up there until the loan is fully repaid. All right. So that means if you are using your VA loan to own a property and you decide that you want to let somebody assume your VA loan, if they do not transfer that or substitute that entitlement, it may be challenging for you to use that VA loan again to buy your next property, right? So it's super important to understand their entitlement, which is on their certificate of eligibility, and strategize with them on what they're really trying to do. Because of course, a 2.5% interest rate looks glamorous in this interest rate environment. But at the same time, if that's going to prevent them from being able to utilize their VA loan in the future, that could be a big issue for them, okay? Also, VA homeowners also lose that portion of their entitlement entirely if the assumer later experiences a foreclosure or short sale. So now it really becomes a question of, is it really worth it to have someone assume your loan? Because if you do not substitute their entitlement and they assume your loan and they foreclose or they short sale, you could lose that portion of your entitlement. And that's huge. That can be devastating, especially because realistically, you have somebody assume your loan, you're not paying attention to that property anymore. You know what I'm saying? Let's say you change duty stations, you're renting for a little bit, and you're saying, "Hey, it's time for me to buy again," only to find out that the previous person who assumed your entitlement, excuse my language, but shit the bed. You know what I'm saying? They foreclosed or they had to do a short sale situation, and now you can't properly utilize your VA loan because of that. It's something you definitely want to be aware of. All right. And now I wanted to kind of bring this up. It's the MRP designation through Realtor. It's the Military Relocation Professional, and it's a certification for real estate professionals who want to work with current and former military service members. The reason I brought it up is because I'm not going to lie, me personally, I do not have this designation. Really, this designation just teaches you how to work with military personnel. Okay. Do I think it's worth it? That could be argued. I definitely think got it for CE. Yes, ma'am. So I think it's good to have. I don't think it's the end all be all, especially if you want to base your business with military personnel. I think it's definitely, if you've never worked a VA loan before, it's going to give you great tools. It's going to give you great resources. It's not like, you get the MRP designation and then automatically, military leads start falling out the sky. It's definitely something to add to your repertoire, but it's definitely not the end all be all, guys. I would say, once you get a little bit established, because of course these designations cost money, once you get a little established and you have a little bit of money to spend on it, why not? But I wouldn't sit there and say, like, I need to have it. It's not that big of a deal. All right. And if it'll switch over, there we go. All right. And these are some freak scenarios I want to talk to you guys about. All right. So I want to talk about the caver system. And the CAVR system is basically the credit alert verification reporting system. And I had a situation with a good client of mine, Jonathan Jacobs. He was going to be the first person, like between him, his parents, grandparents, great grandparents, to ever own a home. And it was very exciting. He had 4 kids, his wife. We probably saw 20 or 30 properties. We've seen a lot. He just wanted to see everything that was available to him. And I got really involved in the process with them, and we had a really good time. And, he became a really good friend. We finally find the right property and we go under contract. Now, from my understanding, once that contract is submitting and it goes into underwriting, they're supposed to check the credit alert verification reporting system to see if there's been any default on federal loans. Okay. Now, they don't always do this. And depending on the lender, they dang sure don't always do this. And sometimes until the very end, right before you get the final approval. So what happened to my client, Jonathan, is he had defaulted on a federal backed student loan. Okay. Didn't think it was going to affect him at all. He had great credit, great, great credit. But we were 3 days before closing, and they alerted us that the credit alert verification reporting system had reported that he had a defaulted student loan that is going to prevent him from buying the property. They said that he would either have to reach out and go ahead and settle this, or he would have to just basically give up. There was no other option than that. So we're like, okay, let's put our heads together. And we reach out to the proper channels to figure out what we have to do to solve this. And it turned out that it was basically a 6-month process. Okay. It was a 6-month process for him to get all of these things tied up for him to even be able to get back into the home buying process. So the reason I wanted to bring this up to you guys is because when you're talking about not only, have you defaulted on any mortgage payments or things like that, bringing up any federally backed loans is kind of important as well, because the last thing you want is a subpar lender waiting until the last minute to run this verification, and then it pops up and y'all could have potentially got ahead of it in the beginning. Thankfully enough, I can say Jonathan was a very strong-willed person. After the 6 months, he got what he needed. We jumped back in and we were able to get him that home. All right. But I'm gonna be honest with you. That has been the only time I've dealt with this situation. But it was such a heartbreak that I tell all my agents and I bring it up to all my clients, because it's something you don't really think about sometimes, but could come back and bite you in the butt big time. All right. Next one is the new construction builder database. All right. For people that are in areas that are expanding rapidly and they have a lot of small time builders, really trying to make their names prominent in their market, the VA does have a database where builders are basically registered with them. Okay. So a lot of the times the lender will ask the builder or you as the buyer agent for basically their database ID number so they can look them up in this database. If that builder does not have it, you're not doing a deal with them. Okay. They can go through the proper channels to go ahead and apply for that to get into that builder database. But it, the time that I experienced, it took 2.5 months. And by then, my client was already under contract, closed, living in the property. So definitely something to think about as well if you're dealing with military personnel that are looking at new construction homes. Of course, if this is a builder that does a lot of business in your area, I would assume they're probably, checking their boxes, crossing their T's, dotting their I's, but always ask just to give that extra layer of certainty and you don't get yourself in a situation that might end up causing some issues for your client and causing some heartbreak for yourself. All right. And now this is I have a love-hate relationship with this one. Private road maintenance agreement. I had a deal take 5 months because of a private road maintenance agreement. What basically happened was there was this small little neighborhood. The neighborhood was built probably 50 or 60 years ago by one person, right? He had owned the land, he developed it, this, that, and another, and they just had a private road. They didn't have anything that was, being tracked or established with the Department of Transportation. And it got down, and crazy enough, I was on the listing side for this one. The buyer was VA. My client was also a VA client, but he had already owned the property. He didn't have any issues getting it. Okay, so we think we're good to go. Not the case. All right, so it comes time for final approval for this VA buyer, and they say, hey, we need a private road maintenance agreement. Come to find out there's not one. All right, so we had a couple of options there. All right, either we can terminate, the buyer can assume responsibility for the entire private road, which is kind of crazy. There was about 25 homes in this little neighborhood here, and she would be responsible for the entire road. All right. Or Another person could sign a waiver basically saying they take responsibility for the entire road. It had to be notarized and it had to be recorded at the Register of Deeds. I'm talking about a crazy process, guys. So now we're kind of sitting at a crossroads where either the buyer has to take responsibility of this road or we need to find somebody to take responsibility of this road. And guys, let me tell you something. This road was jacked up from Monday to Sunday. Okay? I'm talking about they had wires out the dirt road. There was big holes. There was parts where you could tell they tried to asphalt it and it just didn't work out. So the buyer immediately said, "Oh, well, I'll take responsibility of the road if you give me $30,000. So you can either do a price drop of 30,000 or you can give us 30,000 of proceeds after the sale and we'll take care of this road." That absolutely demolished my seller. So now, not only is my seller thinking about, well, why didn't I run into this issue when I bought it? You know, what is the conflict here? Where am I not understanding? And realistically, called the lender that he used, they missed it. They completely missed it. And at this point, so I was like, well, is there any kind of, like solution that y'all can help out with? No. So what we ended up having to do was we had to get really personal with everybody in that neighborhood, and we had to let them know this. If you're planning on selling your property, especially to anybody that's VA, which is once again 85 to 90% of our market, you're going to run into this issue. We had to basically go on a campaign educating almost everybody in the neighborhood on what the ramifications of not having a private road maintenance agreement was. And ultimately, if I have to be completely honest with you guys, I ended up paying about 5 to 7 people out of my own commission to make them feel comfortable enough together to take responsibility for the road. Ended up being a couple people that have lived there for about 10, 20 years, and then a couple of people that actively were kind of helping out the road. They didn't want to take full responsibility, but they would help their neighbors out, make sure like the ground was clear, there wasn't nothing crazy in it. So we got a few people together. I ended up paying them to take responsibility of it. They ended up signing the agreement, went and got it notarized, and we were able to save the deal that way. We had to do 3 extensions for that deal. I had to give over half my commission for that deal to get them to feel comfortable to do that. And what it realistically came down to was I had to get a contractor out there to give me a quote on what maintenance would look like. They took that maintenance cost, they multiplied it by 5 years, and they said, "You give us this." And at the end of the day, I wanted to get it done. So we got it done. But that private road maintenance agreement, always make sure if you're going to view that property and that road looks shifty, you know what I'm saying? It looks like it's not being maintained by the Department of Transportation. Ask the listing agent, ask if they have an agreement in place, because I promise you, you're gonna run into that situation. And who wants a deal to terminate over a silly road? I'm telling you, especially when the client's cool with it. Client was cool with it when they saw it. All right. And then the last scenario is if you've worked with VA, you kind of know this already, but the buyers have the opportunity to receive money back at closing, guys. And how does this happen, right? So when a seller provides a credit that exceeds the amount of the buyer's closing costs or costs in general in the transaction, they can get the leftover money back at closing. Okay. But the caveat to that is they can only get as much money as they put into the transaction. I've had clients, after paying their appraisal fee and their due diligence, we're a due diligence state here in North Carolina, so after paying your either earnest money deposit, due diligence, paying their appraisal fee, X, Y, and Z, whatever you put into the transaction, that's what that military member can get back. I've had clients get $3,000, $4,000 back at closing. Okay. So once again, if the credits or concessions that you're receiving from the seller supersede the client's closing costs or overall cost in the transaction, they can get money back up to as much as they put in it, right? They can't get more than what they put into the transaction. But the fact of the matter is, being in a situation where you're getting a check at closing along with keys, that's kind of a best case scenario. Okay. So something to think about as well. And then what I want to end off on, I'm not going to sit here and tell y'all about VA loan and military members and things like that without trying to help y'all get more VA leads. Okay. So realistically, the low hanging fruit, if you want to work with more military members, is agent to agent referrals. Okay. And honestly, military Facebook groups. All right. So there are tons and tons and tons of military PCSing to Fort Bragg, relocating to Fort Bragg, military groups. You go in there and you provide value. Okay. And what I mean by provide value is Don't post your under contract, just sold posts in there. Be the local guide. Tell them where date night is, where the most popular date night is. Tell them where the local cafes are, who has the best, childcare, where are the best schools at. Okay? Because you got to think when these people are given notice that they have to uproot their whole life and go to a different location, those people are going to have questions. They're going to want to know where the best food is, where the best childcare, where the best education, where the best place to live is. Okay? Where do I need to worry about for traffic when I'm trying to get on base? What gate is the easiest to get to? All right? And you're going to find a lot of that in these Facebook groups. All right? I've known a couple agents who have been wildly successful at creating YouTube channels based on just relocating to that base. So providing value in military Facebook groups, I'm gonna tell you right now, it's a gold mine. You just don't realize it yet. Another thing being is if you truly are at a duty station, you should at least have 2 to 3 agents in your back pocket for almost every duty station. There's no reason not to. Okay? Because if your client that you help buy a house, it's time for them to sell, they're most likely PCSing somewhere else. Okay? And that's an easy referral right there. Refer it on over to one of our EXP military members. Okay? Like the group is literally created for that. All right. Now, these two lead sources at the bottom, we're gonna have to talk about a little bit. All right. So Veterans United and Realty Plus. All right. So Veterans United is one of the biggest VA home loan originators in the United States of America, right? A lot of veterans do a lot of business with Veterans United, right? Veterans United has a preferred program, which I am a part of. I am blessed to be a part of. We close a lot of business with Veterans United, but the caveat to Veterans United is they do have higher fees for their service members, and that's something to really pay attention to. Because if you are afforded the opportunity to join their network, Veterans United, I would say do it. But at the same time, you have to be strategic because you're going to have an agreement with Veterans United Realty that you're going to receive referrals that are pre-approved already through Veterans United Home Loans. And realistically, they're going to want you to keep those leads with Veterans United Home Loans, right? But this is how we get around that. First and foremost, we have a fiduciary duty to our clients to make sure we do what's in the best nature for our clients, right? And if we know that they're getting charged at the yin yang, that doesn't align with our fiduciary duties. So what I do is I usually get two of my best local lenders. I tell my client, I phrase it like this, because this is serious, right? Do you care about just wrapping this up as quickly as possible, or do you want to really save as much money as you can? Because some military members will tell you, like, man, I'm just trying to wrap this up as quickly as possible. I'll refinance, I'll do whatever later down the road. I only plan on being here for 2 or 3 years. But a majority of those people are going to say, well, yeah, man, Caleb, I want to save as much money as possible. So what I'll do is I'll refer them to one or two of my local lenders, go ahead and get that application process started. 10 out of 10 every single time my lender beats Veterans United, right? But then I go back to Veterans United and I tell them, well, hey, client's shopping around and they got a better rate. So now Veterans United has to be competitive. So now we're Michelle got kicked out of you. Right? So and now what we're doing is we're putting two lenders together to be competitive for your buyer, right? So now it doesn't become a situation, well, oh, Caleb is taking Veterans United leads and they're giving them to another lender. No, what I'm doing is I'm creating an environment where the buyer wins. Okay? Veterans United has a case to make. Usually what they'll do is they'll just match what the other lender is giving. And in my opinion, that's not enough. All right? We have to play the game just like Michelle just said, right? Everything is negotiable, including the fees and rates that their lenders are giving them. So that's how I get around that stipulation. I introduce them to new lenders who I know that's going to blow Veterans United out the water, and then I reintroduce Veterans United to the conversation so they can try to save their business. But at the end of the day, and I've talked to plenty of people at Veterans United who have tried to get on my case about that, but at the end of the day, I'm being fair to everybody. I'm being fair to my client and giving them the full range of their fiduciary duties that are required to them. And I am allowing Veterans United to keep their own business, right? So this is just, yeah, yeah. I just had a client snitch on me for it too, and it's crazy. But there are ways to work within that framework. Okay, guys. Now, Realty Plus. Realty Plus is Navy Federal Credit Unions kind of referral program. Now, Realty Plus is super wishy-washy. I'm not gonna lie to you. Typically, Realty Plus works with it's invite only. They usually work with like Century 21s. Like I think anyone under that Anywhere brand now, but you can apply, you can make your case, especially if you work with a Navy Federal Credit Union loan officer. That's going to be your best bet getting into that program. Have a really great transaction with them and ask if they can give you kind of a referral or a recommendation to get into the program. Now, EXP is partnered up with Home Story for leads as well, and Home Story is utilized by USAA, another opportunity that you can get into as well. All right, but the big thing to kind of overarching for those two is Veterans United, Home Store, and Realty Plus are invite-only lead platforms, meaning the agents can't simply sign up and get leads. They must apply and be approved. Acceptance is typically based on performance standards, responsiveness, client experience, and demonstrated expertise working with VA buyers. They're going to want to make sure not only that you have enough time on your license, so it means you have a couple years of experience, but you've worked with the VA before. Okay. And these platforms are selected because they protect veteran experience and agents who are accepted or trusted to deliver a high level of service, education, and professionalism. Being approved by these sources signals credibility in the VA space and become a strong, consistent pipeline for military-focused business. So while Veterans United and Realty Plus are great sources for VA leads, you got to know how to work them to be able to best protect your buyer. Okay? Because Veterans United, they'll give you tons of leads. I've seen them fuel people's whole businesses, but at what cost, right? And at a certain point in time, your integrity comes into question if you know that you can get them better rates and better fees. Okay? So definitely finding a framework that allows you to both represent your client, but also still get the benefits of receiving those leads. In my opinion, the best way to get the VA leads are through agent to agent referrals and military Facebook groups because the military Facebook groups allow you to establish your brand, allow you to establish your credibility, and allows you to really rake in leads. Agent to agent referrals can become kind of consistent once you start actually seeing what the PCS timeline is. Okay. Here in Fayetteville, we see that PCS timeline really start getting active in January and really start tapering off in late August. Okay. So I'm usually reaching out to all of my referral partners. Hey, we're gearing up for a crazy year this year. Just trying to make contact, trying to just warm things up. And usually I try to always be the first person that sends a referral. I don't like feeling like I'm taking from a lot of people. So I always try to put my best foot forward in that sense. And if you come from a place of value, you'll be very surprised at how far you go in those two respective places, the agent to agent referrals and the military Facebook groups. And at that, guys, I leave you. I appreciate your time and I appreciate you sitting here listening to me ramble on about literally something that's changed my life. I grew up here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And of course, being so close to a military base, you see the impacts that the military and the personnel have on the area. But it wasn't until I got into real estate that I really understood, the significance of them in our community. So I appreciate you guys.
Yes, thank you, Caleb. So this was great. Lots and lots of information. You covered like I mean,
Yeah.
there's always more, right? But like, geez,
Yeah.
like you covered things that I was like, oh yeah, that does happen, huh? Like,
Yeah.
so,
100%.
all right, guys. I guess let's do some Q&A.
Yeah.
We have 10 minutes, guys. So, take yourselves off of mute if you want. Let's see your pretty faces because nobody's pretty faces there. Let's see them, and yeah, ask away. Any questions you guys have?
Yeah, 100%. I know I covered a lot, touching on different subjects. And like I said, I will hold on, let me go ahead and copy and paste this. Can I copy the link into the chat for their presentation?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so you can reference it if you ever need it. And of course, I'll drop my social in here just so you can if you ever need anything, you can reach out. But the biggest thing is, guys, is reps. Okay. The more you work with military, the more you're going to understand it. And like Michelle said, I'm sure there's millions of things that I haven't came across while working with the military. And that's kind of the fun, exciting part about it. But the big thing is when you come across one of these weird harebrained situations, you internalize it and you make it systematic. Okay. You put it onto that list of things that you're talking about during that buyer consultation, because the better you prepare your clients and yourself, the smoother that transaction goes. Okay.
And the
I
better you
really mean
prepare
that.
your sellers too at listing appointments, if you see something that's like, not going to work for VA, not going to work for VA. Like you mentioned,
Oh
you
yeah,
don't get a lot of roofs, but here in Florida, we get a lot of roofs. I mean,
I
for
can
VA
imagine.
and also insurance. So it's like, it ain't going to get past both of them. So I see a roof that's 15 years or older. It's like, nope, it's not like, it's not going to happen. If the appraiser
Exactly.
lets it go, it's not going to happen with insurance or vice versa. It's just not. But I want to talk about guys like, because we're all in this process of like, well, how do we better serve the military community? And your point to the best way to get, to just gain more access to military clients with being the groups and the agent to agent referrals. I 100% agree with you. Back in my day, 11 years ago when I started, you used to be able to DM people on Facebook without it going to the other folder. So it used to
Yep.
actually pop up, which was great. And I was all up in the spouses groups, man. Like I was
Mhm.
all up in there. And then it's like you said, like, yes, there's people directly asking for realtors every once in a while, but sometimes there's just people asking questions. And then so if you just come into these groups, just adding value, socializing, making new friends, joining any groups that already exist, or if some groups don't exist, like start one. Like there's so many like little moms groups or moms of toddlers or whatever. Like just do like that's the stuff I would look at. But I'm sure there's like groups for dudes too that they go play sports or whatever. I don't know. But
Yeah.
just like get involved and build those relationships because that's essentially at the end of the day what that is. You're in these groups to become known, to build, even if it's a social relationship, right? Like you're building some kind of relationship with the people that are in there. And referrals, guys, when you go to EXPCon, when you go to the regional rallies, like meet people that are, even if they're super close, but not close enough to do the deal themselves, guys, meet them anyway, network with people because you never know when a referral opportunity presents itself or when you have a referral that you need to send out and you're like, I just met so and so from whatever area, right? Even if it's an hour and a half away. I mean, that it's still
Yeah.
an opportunity. And what was the other thing I was going to say? I had an agent that I met at my former company's convention years ago. Met him once. We had a great, vibe or whatever. He sent me so many referrals. And I unfortunately just did not ever have an opportunity to send him one back. I swear. Like if I know if anybody would have told me, oh, Tucson, Arizona, I'd have been like that guy. But like
Yeah.
literally nobody ever told me. So I'm like, oh my God. But he used to send me so many referrals because I would close them and then people would ask him, hey, do you know somebody in Fort Walton Beach, Florida? And he would be like, yes, Michelle. So it didn't even come from him sometimes. It would come because he was so well connected
Yeah.
that he would connect me with others, right? And then so you never know who you're going to meet, like network with these agents in military towns, like solid advice, like you said. If you have a base somewhere, like you need to find people at those bases and network with them on the regular, especially if your base tends to go back and forth to certain bases, right? Like certain positions or certain planes and stuff like that. And the Air Force will go, I'm speaking like a spouse here. Like I really, I'm sure, I'm sure the veterans are kind of like, yes, Michelle, I get it. But you know what I mean? Like network with the people, like, that kind of go back and forth between the same bases all the time.
Yeah, and I like to add spouses, and I see a couple people mention that they serve. Thank you for your service. Y'all have an opportunity that a lot of people don't have. Y'all already know the process. Y'all have been in the trenches in this lifestyle. So you'll be able to relate and provide even more value to it. Let's talk about new military. You know what I'm saying? The new people that just joined, and they have spouses and they're trying to navigate this new lifestyle. Y'all have an opportunity to provide so much value and realistically grow not only your network, grow your brand, but also give back to that same community that you were in the trenches of. And me personally, I'm all about giving back. And I think that I'm not gonna lie, knowing what I know now, I would definitely go back and I would have joined. You know what I'm saying? Before I blew my shoulder out and everything, like the amount of opportunities and resources and just the camaraderie in that community is unmatched. And so I do believe spouses, service members, retired veterans, y'all have this opportunity in your real estate career to really give back, really educate and provide value. And I'm sure if you haven't already been doing it, it will 10, 20, 30 times your business.
Yeah. Can I just say that you are like an excellent example? Because I think a lot of times, you might find people that are living in a military heavy community and feel like they can't properly serve because they haven't themselves served. And I think sometimes as a spouse, I would feel that way too. I'm like, I'm over here like acting like I know, because like I kind of know, but I'm a spouse. It's not the same.
Yeah.
Right? Like I'm not, So sometimes we have these feelings of like, can I really serve them? Because can I really serve the military members because I myself am not an actual military member. I even feel this as a spouse too, because like you guys just heard me, like I'm probably explaining something wrong. Is that I'm not in that, like I wasn't in that, right? And I want to say that you are the perfect example of a person who is serving military members at an extremely high level.
Thank you.
Like, you know your stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, you are just serving them at the utmost highest level, and you didn't yourself serve, and it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean
No,
anything.
it
You can
doesn't.
still serve the military community that you care about with heart and
Yeah.
service, like at that level, and you didn't have to actually serve. So thank you. Anyways, thank you for serving the military community, and thank you for coming over here and just like dropping all these knowledge bombs on us.
100%.
But yeah,
Honestly, like it's a great pleasure, and I take a lot of pride in being able to serve those who serve us. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying? And
totally.
I got started, like I said, 6 years ago, and I was 24 years old. And not just with my military members, but my clients as a whole. Most of the time they're opening the door and they're saying, "Are you even old enough to be an agent?" You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like in the beginning, I just loaded myself with as much knowledge and information, and I am a very coachable person, and I am okay with being wrong. So when I say something wrong and somebody corrects me, I take it and I learn it. And especially dealing with a lot of military people, you get to see, and this is just real estate as a whole, you get to see the inner workings of not only the systems of the military, but how it affect people. You know what I'm saying? How it really affects their day-to-day lives. How it, when somebody has to move halfway across the country and they don't really have a moving allowance like that. You know what I'm saying? So they have to be really specific about where their money goes. You get to see a lot that really gives you a new perspective and a whole new appreciation of service members. Not even talking about them fighting the wars and everything like that, being here for us, the things they have to go through. Because realistically, if you are prior military, active military, or a spouse, the military is hurry, 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 wait, wait, wait. You know what I'm saying?
Hurry up and
So,
wait.
exactly. So it's just, it's been an absolute blessing for me to even be in this position. And I'm so excited to be able to take it farther and further, to be completely honest with you.
Yay. All right, you guys. Well, I've been in this chat and it doesn't seem like there's any questions. No. And Anisha actually did ask, are there any sessions similar to this? Guys, if you want to see any kinds of trainings in particular, okay, please DM me in my name right there. It says my Instagram handle, Realtor Trainer Coach. Please DM me. I want to hear what you guys want to learn about because I plan all of this, right? So I'm just here trying to keep some variety. But if there's something like, y'all, we have to talk about this, let me know and we will get like maybe you can teach it, maybe I get we're going to find somebody to teach it, or we're going to have a mastermind about it, but I want to put it on the schedule. So yes, please send me a DM and we will get that taken care of. And Monica, I think you raised your hand, you had a question.
Yeah, I was just going to ask when the next one is.
Oh, the next one. Okay, so these okay, so these
But you
trainings
answered that.
happen. Great question. So these trainings happen on the first and third Thursday of every month at the same time, 12 Eastern. So we
Okay.
have everything like pre-scheduled out. If you're in the Facebook group, there are posts usually on Tuesdays, Fridays, and yeah, Tuesdays and Fridays. There'll be you'll see the post regularly, like, hey, this is the next upcoming training. So, like for example, for this one, we posted about it 3 times in the 2 weeks leading up to it. So if you're kind of in there, or you're not seeing anything because your algorithm's not showing it to you, just pop in and
Right.
scroll, and you'll see all the upcoming trainings. But for your calendar purposes, every first and third Tuesday at noon, noon Eastern, there will be some sort of something happening in the military network community.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, folks. So it's time. Thank you, Caleb, for joining us. We really appreciate it. As always, this link for YouTube will be in our Facebook group, so you guys can check it out again, along with Caleb's link for the presentation in case you guys need to reference all that super awesome information. But yeah, join us next time. It will be, let me just say it right now in the video in case somebody's watching this later. So the next one will be on February 3rd at noon. So we'll see you guys there.
All right, guys. Thank you again, Michelle. I really do
Oh,
appreciate
you're
it.
welcome. Thank you. All right. See you later, guys.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.